Can you homeschool while working, and how do you balance it all?
This question is asked a lot. I see it in some Facebook groups quite often, where both mom and dad have to work, or maybe it's a single parent family. And whether it's full time or part time, it really is becoming much more common than when we were homeschooling to have to work. Now, we both did work, although mine was unpaid volunteer work, but I juggled a lot as well. So it's really I hope this is encouraging to parents to know that you can do both. The one thing I always land on, though, is that you want to do a good job for your employer and you want to do a good job for your children. And so we're going to talk about some ways to make that happen.
One of the thing for me is I did not work well, I take that back. A lot of my work was like Nancy, it was just volunteer in the home. It was not just, it was volunteering in the homeschool space. And we were lobbying for good homeschool laws in South Carolina. So that was really the first 7 or 8 years of our homeschooling experience. Then I ran a homeschooling organization and we had an office, but I worked mainly from home. And I've worked for publishers. I worked for a publisher in Nashville when Lizzie was in high school. So that was my first real job outside of the homeschool landscape, although it was to develop a homeschool product line for B&H Publishing. And so I just want to encourage people, if you're working from home, it's a little bit easier just because you're all together. The things that my friends found hard, especially those that are working home today, is that they say it would be easier if they left 3 hours a day rather than tried to work at home. And so there's some of my friends who have actually had a mommy's helper or brought in childcare for 3 hours a day or 3 hours 2 times a week, or had a grandparent come and stay in the house while they worked a few hours a day. So there are all kinds of ways you can work that. And Nancy, you and I are talking, you might want to talk about this. There are a lot of people who do a lot of work late afternoon and evenings because our kids aren't tied to that same schedule.
Well, and think about this. Even in high school, it didn't take us that long to get our schoolwork done, and then the kids could work independently on other things.
That's right.
But if we were done by lunch, that gave me the whole afternoon and into the evening, some evenings if we didn't have family or church things. Um, so look at your schedule, the pieces of your day that can be structured in a way to give you some good time with your kids. Maybe start the morning at the table and go over their, core subjects or things that they need you for, and then turn them loose with some independent work, whether it's with video courses or they're old enough and independent enough to work on their own. I remember, so I was volunteering for our children's ministry at church, and I went to check email. I was also volunteering in the homeschool world. And I went to check email and I came back, and Alex, poor little sweet Alex, our youngest daughter, she goes, I said when I left, I said, I'll be back in 5 minutes. I just need to go check an email and respond. And I came back like a half hour later. She goes, when she was older, she told me, Mom, I used to think 5 minutes was a really long time. Because you would say you'd be gone for 5 minutes, and then it was, a half
Yes,
hour or an
yes.
hour later. So, it's really funny the things that they remember. But I think there are ways we can adapt and put some systems and rhythms in place that let us manage both.
And, you hear a lot about take your daughter to work day or take your son to work day. I had a lot of friends who actually, especially if they just had one child, would take that child to work and they had a desk in the office. Now, this is obviously when they were older and that worked for them. So I had a lot of friends who were nurses and one friend who was a doctor, and they did a lot of night shift work. They would go into work at 5 when their husband got home and work till 1 or 2 in the morning. Some of them worked from 11 to 7, which is really tough. And some of in the medical field, a lot of people can work 2 weekend shifts and be paid for 40 hours a week. And so I think homeschooling moms are very creative in figuring out how to work, how to do what they need to do, to contribute to the household finances if they need to, but then also how to make sure their children get a lot of special time from them.